So turning to our next speaker now, I'm delighted to welcome Professor Radhika Desai from Canada. Welcome, Radhika.
Thanks, Kate, and thanks, John and Learning from China for organizing this. This is absolutely fascinating, and I hope you'll find what I have to say a little interesting. A lot of the chat on the here has been about the US versus China, and of course, for a very long time, people have been talking about the Washington consensus and the Beijing consensus and all that. And that is, to me, at least a little bit misleading in the following sense, that I think what we are witnessing here is actually the failure of capitalism. A little while ago, about a month ago, actually, I wrote a piece in which, just around the middle of March, when the severity of the crisis really hit Western countries in a big way. And I pointed out that this is really a long overdue reckoning with the accumulated contradictions of neoliberalism. And there are a number of different fronts on which. So first of all, what we are witnessing is that the West is unable to respond with the same vigor and or with the magnitude of resources that China has devoted to addressing the issues. And that is partly why you get the vast contrast in the performance that John's figures have just demonstrated. And that's basically because of course, we've seen how in Western countries, whatever preparedness for such pandemics even existed a little while ago has been whittled away in the name of cost effectiveness, etc., etc. And of course, medical systems have been whittled down by decades of neoliberal cost cutting and so on. Secondly, the state itself does not have, because it operates under the strictures of essentially international finance, the state itself is unable to respond. It doesn't have the capacity to do what the Chinese did, build hospitals in 10 days out of nowhere and so on, and impose the sort of lockdowns that they were able to impose. Anyway, so the point is that state capacity is very low. And finally, I think there's another very, very important thing for everybody to bear in mind, and that is the political capacity of all Western countries is at a very low point. The political forces that command broad legitimacy are actually not there. That's why you got the likes of Trump and Boris Johnson being elected. And even, of course, in places like Germany, for example, which we are told is doing comparatively well, although John's figures reveal otherwise. Angela Merkel is okay. She's doing better right now. But the fact of the matter is that her popularity was also declining. So political capacity of forces to say, okay, we are going to do this and we need to do this, etc., is not there. So in all of these ways, it is actually a failure, we could say, of neoliberal capitalism. But if you think about the fact that, quite frankly, capitalism is unable to take any other form at this point in time, then you might actually realize that this is a failure of neoliberalism. I'd like to add one other thing, which is actually quite important. The present pandemic is often compared to the Spanish flu, but the Spanish flu, from a political point of view and from a historical point of view, we have to remember that the Spanish flu took place at a time when there was really no, the post-war social contract, under which in some ways we still exist, in which governments take responsibility for basic public health, and even back in the 50s and 60s for employment levels, welfare, etc., etc. This social contract did not exist. And so, and what neoliberalism has done is, on the one hand, it has actually not outright negated the social contract, but on the other hand, it has whittled away state capacity to keep to the social contract. So what we have instead right now is governments that want to appear as though they are straining every nerve to address the crisis, but in fact, when you look underneath, that something completely opposite is going on. Again, as John's figures reveal, we're actually looking at a sort of herd immunity strategy in disguise, in drag, and it appears as though it is in fact a strategy for addressing the virus. But in fact, our states do not have the capacity to do this. So I think the other thing that we are all going to have to think about is, a lot of us feel very vindicated when our states have undertaken extremely energetic strategies, $2 trillion program to address the coronavirus problem in the United States, and $1,500 to every person, etc., etc. The fact is that underneath all this, what you're looking at is an effort to preserve precisely the neoliberal capitalist model and that we have, and blaming China, attacking China, refusing to learn from China, refusing to cooperate with China is part of this strategy, because of course it's not really a China model. Basically what you are looking at is what China represents in the West is essentially some form of socialism, whether you like it or not, and there may be many criticisms one can make, but it is that model that has allowed China to have the state capacity, to devote the resources, and to have the political capacity to do what it wants. And this is what has been vindicated. The West's model is going to break down. There is still at the moment a lot of misinformation which is keeping it afloat, and of course in coming weeks and months, if John's figures are actually, if we may go by them, I think that what we are going to face is a major political crisis in which the West actually does not have the political capacity, does not have the political forces that can take charge in the place of the discredited establishment. Thank you.